Leadership doesn't fall apart in those big moments. It happens time after time in these little erosions under pressure, expectations, and this like unspoken belief that you're supposed to have it all together by now and everyone should have it figured out. And I think that's where joy shines and is the most misunderstood. Welcome to the Joyosity podcast, where we are talking about joy in the reality of your everyday leadership life. Joy isn't optimism. It definitely isn't toxic positivity and pretending everything is just fine when it's all on fire. And I wrote a book called Joyosity, where we talk about how do we actually put this into your everyday walking around life. And so this series is about joyosity in practice, one where leaders are ready to understand what you do when the pressure is real and the stakes are high and the old ways of doing things just aren't working. So we're taking it out of theory and really putting it into your lived experience of like, what does this look like at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday? And so I have brought in real leaders who have faced real tension and moments where staying human and practicing joyosity is the most effective leadership move. And so today, I'm so excited because we are welcoming a dear old friend who is an amazingly wise human who helps us really with this big question. What happens and why does misalignment steal so much joy and so much productivity? And so I cannot wait to introduce you to Harry Cook. He has served as chief of staff, a strategic enterprise leader across financial services, federal government services, healthcare, and just beyond, including nonprofits. He has this amazing wealth of experience from the intersection of the C-suite to teams that are smaller and the ones who are actually putting things out into the field. He knows what it's like to translate strategy, absorb all of that confusion and misalignment to try to keep the long-term vision intact when every fire seems to be the one that competes for your attention. He is one of those rare leaders who not only says the quiet part out loud, but says it usually with a fantastic story and some great clarity and just enough of a poke at you to make you uncomfortable to get you to move. So I can't wait to introduce you to my friend, Harry Cook. Hi, Harry. Oh, Harry. Here we are.
Now I'm muted. Now I'm unmuted.
Now
Hi.
It's all me.
I could keep talking like I don't have a mic on if that would help. I don't
It's
know how
great.
you do your podcast. Does that help?
It's fantastic. I am
Okay.
so grateful for you today. And so as we were talking about joyosity in practice and how to cultivate joy, help us know how you got here. I didn't say in the introduction that I did meet you for the very first time when I was a freshman in college and you were the president of chapel choir. And so we were both music majors. How did you get to this place now? Tell us where you are.
Well, Jen, as a lifelong learner with a humanities degree
from William Jewell College, thank you very much.
From William Jewell College in Liberty, Missouri, I was prepared for multiple career changes in my life. Does that help? Is that the perfect answer? I mean, I think it's very true. I think it's true, actually. But I'm also, putting a little mustard on it. I've always jokingly said what my real skill is. I speak geek, human, and executive, and I know how to translate that through the three languages. And I think that's a lot of what happens in organizations is that we don't understand up the org and back down the org. If you're higher in the org, you've been lower in the org, so you're like, yeah, I get it. I get what's happening down there. But I do think often in our middle tier of organizations, that's where communication breaks down. That's where culture breaks down. And so that's the place where I've sort of historically always had jobs, just because at my core, I'm an advocate that gets frustrated. And so, a grumpy optimist who comes in and goes, wait a second, did you not know this is happening down here? We could be fixing this. Doesn't everybody see that? And we can talk about win in the marketplace of ideas. The greatest idea does or does not win. But a lot of my life has been straddling between those different orgs and levels of the organization and trying to explain that. And as you said, I worked in a lot of different places. So how one goes from being a dual music major to being someone that's a chief of staff or leading enterprise programs or something like that has to do again with the idea of just being very creative and very curious. And I don't say those as pat on the back phrases. I think that's something that everybody has. And so for me, it was really just kind of chasing the next task. And that task sometimes led me to a new job. So that's how that sort of pieced together. And I would say over the last decade or so of being a grown up, that most of my next opportunities have come because someone called and said, "Hey, I think there's a Harry Cook shaped hole here. And are you interested? Is this something you might like to do?" And so it's been really fun. I've been in 3 or 4 different industries just in the last decade,
Uh-huh.
in large Fortune 100 and Fortune 50 companies as well, and big. I was on a program that was the largest healthcare system implementation in human history. That was fascinating. I encourage anyone to go read the op-ed I put in Kansas City Star about that. But
Hmm.
there's lots of interesting things that I've been able to touch over the last few years of my career. So that's how I come to
Well,
you today.
I think one of the things that, because I know you inside and outside of work, I think one of the things that you do so well is the thing that you talked about of being the grumpy advocate, and I would almost add the stubborn advocate,
Yeah,
uh, in the way of it. The first answer, I think sometimes leaders raise their hand and say, "Hey, I see something that's not working," and then somebody says, "Well, blah 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 blah," and they go, "Oh,
right.
okay." And what I have witnessed you do in beautiful and amazing ways and have heard you do in work over the last, I'm not going to say how many decades, is that you don't accept that first blah, 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 blah answer. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, but we can. Like there is an optimism there, as you said, that is a little stubborn. And I think that's really powerful. And one of the things, especially as a chief of staff, you've had that really front row seat to this is how strategy is made, and then also seeing how it's misunderstood as it
Right.
gets translated. What do you think the breakdown is, like, as if you were going to diagnose that issue, because I think it is pervasive. I've had multiple
Yeah.
conversations in this last week about it. What's the breakdown?
It's a challenge because really the shortest answer is it's humanity. And that's not a flippant comment. It is just all of us. And I
People are
give the
going to people.
example, yeah, people are going to people. And so I give the
Hmm.
example of, you set your annual budget for your company. And then usually before the paper's dry on that, we're already wanting to make changes. We're already saying, well, this is an exception, and well, I know I said I would sell this many, or I know we said we would deliver this, or I know I said I only needed this, but we couldn't have known. Yeah, that's what a budget is. It's a forecast against which we'll hold ourselves for the year. We won't necessarily change the budget. We know you're going to go over. We'll say yes to you going over if leadership says, but we still, in December, thought it was going to be here, and you're here now. And the same thing happens on enterprise programs or strategic initiatives or anything else that we try to do as a firm, is that we start out with the best of intents and everybody gets it. And then as the wheels start to come off throughout the year, that's when people start to want to change the terms of engagement. Or really, the thing I would say that I always get most frustrated by is I'm trying to say this as cleanly as I can. You're right. I don't take the first answer, but
Yeah.
I want to say that I can see how that is received sometimes as obstinance. Advocacy can be seen as obstinance.
Hmm.
Advocacy can be seen as negativity,
Hmm.
and so that is the real challenge. If you're trying to do, I had a boss that called it radical candor. If you're
Hmm.
trying to do radical candor with somebody and you map that, it depends on us having, the best truth we can have and having the maximum trust we can have. The challenge
Right.
is that trust is determined by the receiver. And so I could be the most trustworthy person. I could have the best piece of truth that's possible, a very black and white truth. But we operate in complexity. We operate in gray. And the best organizations with the nicest people doing the best missions still have this problem. Even if we're
Absolutely.
family run business, even if
Hmm.
we're all committed to doing the same work. And so
Hmm.
that, I think, is, Jen, how we get out of alignment. It's not that we're not willing to have that transparency with each other. It's that we're all trying to think in three dimensions,
Hmm.
and we're all trying to make your truths and my truths match. And that
Hmm.
is fundamentally the challenge of organizations.
Yeah.
How do we hold each other accountable, but how do we do so with grace and compassion, while at the
Hmm.
same time not just all going along for, well, this is easy reader, or this is the easiest thing to do, I won't get in
Hmm.
trouble. Harry is
Right.
someone who doesn't typically care to get in trouble. I don't mind getting in trouble. I'm willing to be the lightning rod. I'm willing to be the one to say the thing that shouldn't be said. So, as
Uh-huh.
a truth teller that has had career challenges, can I say that on the podcast?
And sure, you sure
Am I allowed to say
can.
that?
You
It is
are.
career challenging. I am not encouraging. Hi, dear listener. If I'm in your ear now, if you're only listening to this and you're not watching me, trust that I am holding you in my heart as I say, it's a tough life to be the truth teller. It's okay. Do your
Hmm.
best. Just know sometimes you're gonna get kicked in the shins. Is that still positive? That's
It
true.
is, well, because it's true. And
Okay.
part of what I'm talking about when I am connecting this to why this connects to joy, there's one, two, maybe three, at least two. One is that joy always involves aligning to your values, and other
Yeah,
people's behavior does not determine mine. Like if I'm going to
that's
live
right.
by my values, and that creates joy for us. And ultimately, I often use the analogy of a closet. If you're going to reorganize a closet, there's a lot of pulling out of crap first, and it's just a hot mess. And so for people to pretend that it's organized when it's in the
Right.
middle of the hot mess is essentially gaslighting. It is the like, wait, but it doesn't feel right. And there is this lying that happens, even though that's not the intention. We're trying to
Right.
make people feel good, like that's the
Right.
heart of it, but when in reality it creates distrust. It creates this lack of security of like, ooh, now I don't know that I can believe this is going to happen, which is trust. And well, maybe I should just leave. That's why talent leaves, because they can see that, wait, you're not, this isn't
Yeah,
going to work. And I
that's right.
think the other important part of what you said is the complexity of it. When we recognize and honor that we're all humans working together, then we can work in a human realm rather than what is often taught to leaders is check the boxes. That is a flat 2D way of approaching a not even 3D, multi-dimensional human organization.
Right.
And that is the power of the truth teller, of the person who does develop trust and candor with people, because you're not accepting the first answer to be contrarian. You're
Correct.
wanting success for everyone. And I think that is what makes a great leader. When we've got a disconnect between, the mission or vision versus the daily work, you need someone who has that ability to not only translate, but also say, but wait, something has changed. Now we're not on track anymore.
That's right. And it's really
Yeah.
hard in organizations to understand the difference between not blowing out the scope, as we might say on a project, like, oh, we
Mm-hmm.
can't add to scope,
Yeah.
which is a lie because people are constantly adding to scope. But
All
anyway,
the time.
all the time. Oh, we're agile. We can add to scope. That's not exactly what that means. But I think sometimes the people who are most successful in an organization, who will work up to leadership, certainly mid-level leadership, their gift is really being the person that keeps the lid on the pot. They're the person
Mm-hmm.
that can keep the chaos from bubbling up to higher levels. And if we're being negative or pejorative here for a second, they're the ones that can take credit for the good stuff and hide the bad stuff, right? That's sort of the extreme that we've all lived, I would assume, as listeners. But the skill really is keeping the lid on the pot, so my boss doesn't see the 1,000 paper cuts happening
Mm-hmm.
underneath. And there is a good truth in that. Executives have to make really difficult decisions with a couple of data points, often conflicting data points. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the reason that sometimes your company will bring in a consultant, or they'll have chief of staff roles, or they'll have others within the org that they bring in to walk across the organization to try to help, measure that or referee that. That is part of why that happens. But they're good at making calls with just a few pieces of detail. But the
Mm-hmm.
reason that they can't pull the brake on the train as much as we want them to is because they'll derail the train.
Yeah.
So it's important, if you're a C-level, you can't make big turns. You can't pull things. You can't scream and hit the brakes very often. Those things cause more chaos. But because of that, what often happens in our orgs is, it's not that I'm unwilling to accept the first answer, it's that the first answer is often a keep the lid on the pot answer.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a complex problem and someone goes, let's just go ahead and not worry about that, or let's just go ahead and do this one little thing, right? But it's three things. We don't really have time for the three things. We can't go tell them we're behind, but we are behind. Well, we'll make it up this weekend. No, we won't. Count the hours. So so
Right,
so
right. Yeah.
that's the challenge. And in orgs and in projects and programs, a lot of times we look to, it's a historic joke that training and testing at the end of a project are often woefully underserved. And now I would throw in the discipline of change management. Change
Mm-hmm.
managers have been thrown into, okay, we got you in this meeting. Tell us what we do so we don't screw this up. And then at the end, well, come on, Deborah, why didn't we, I thought you were going to do something. Didn't you have some little magic thing you wanted us to do? And
Yeah.
and project managers treated much that same way. So I think
Mm-hmm.
where Harry's personality has come out, and trying to use a combination not just of intellect but humor to try to bridge these things, to try to be a shock absorber between this for
Mm-hmm.
people. But being willing to go into those difficult moments with the person trying to keep the lid on the pot and saying, hey, the pot is over boiling. It's boiling over. We're already
Mm-hmm.
here. So
Right.
the sooner we go tell the senior executives, the stakeholders, that we have a problem, and even if we don't have a perfect solution, the fact that we've addressed it, or we've assessed it, we're starting to address it, and we're working together, is a big, powerful win. And I think in a lot of organizations, there's a ton of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the biggest thing that we could talk about. The biggest thing I think is that,
Oh,
what
yeah.
do leaders do, and how do we get into this place, and how do you have authentic joy, and how do you have these
Mm-hmm.
authentic pieces? Well, the answer is, it takes an egoic strength. It takes a strength as a leader and as a leadership team, and then throughout your team, rewarding people who are willing to show you the messy parts, the
Yes.
messy parts
Yeah.
of the program, the things that don't fit, the things that we don't have answers for, and then help reassure them. That's my focus with my teams is, okay, first thing is show me all the messy stuff. But the second is, for my job is to help us build context and build comfort with them. Okay, yep, I got it. That's a real problem. But that's next week's problem. This week's
Mm-hmm.
problem is these three things. That's what we've committed to, this three things this week. And that's where I think sprints are very helpful, right? That
Yeah.
approach of
Mm-hmm.
where you're looking at a week or 2 weeks at a time. We can say, okay, this is our focus. Everyone agrees. But this other thing's blowing up. It's okay. We'll get
Mm-hmm.
back there. We'll get back to
Yeah.
it. It's on the list. It's on the list.
And I think the part about that is, it's, you can do that in a way that is dismissive, and you can do that in a way that's incredibly empathetic.
That's
And
right.
the leaders who have the people skills, the human skills that help the business move forward in that way, are the ones that are the most powerful in those roles, because you are acknowledging the truth. Because just continuing to shove it under the rug does nothing to get to the good business results, and you lose trust and credibility in that
Yeah.
space. So I've been thinking about this question as you've been talking. When you have that disconnect between this kind of mission daily work, is it a communication issue, or is it a leadership integrity issue?
It's a combination of things, and I don't mean to sidestep the question, but
Hmm.
I the hardest thing for any of us to do, I think, is to be as transparent and honest with ourselves, just me to me, right?
Amen.
Me looking at myself in three dimension, me listening to the feedback of others, whether I like it or not, especially those things that cause your soul to sort of,
Mm-hmm.
those are really difficult to do. And I think it's even harder as you grow up in an org and move up in an organization and you're responsible for more and more. But I
And
think
if you've been there a long time, you see less and less because it just becomes invisible to you.
I think there's a truth in that.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest thing that happens within the orgs, I'll answer it this way, is that as we mature, we we can stagnate even if the organization's growing. We can
Mm-hmm.
stagnate. So, having
Yeah.
been inside of some large organizations that have grown to being multi-billion-dollar companies from little entrepreneurial things, you just form a culture. And so the culture in a lot of those orgs, will be one part, hey, we used to, I remember when the leader and I, we used to fly commercial together. I know he's got a Gulfstream now, but he would be picking up trash just like I would. And they'll tell these sort of anecdotal stories, but we're a multi-billion-dollar company now. We're not
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurial. We may have things that we're doing to grow the business, but don't get confused when a $30 billion company is not the same as a $50 startup, right? Those are
Mm-hmm.
two different kinds of, if you want to call them, entrepreneurialism.
Yeah.
Likewise, within our cultures, your culture of a 5-person company can't be the culture you have of a 30,000 employee company.
You can have the
And
same values, but
you can say
your
the
culture
values,
has to
right?
shift
Our North
to
Stars, our
accommodate the
desires.
stage. Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've experienced a lot of times
Mm-hmm.
is the organizations that are struggling is because the culture is not being honest with itself. The
Mm-hmm.
culture will say, these are our principles. We have 7 principles everybody must follow, and this is what we'll judge you on. But the minute you
Mm-hmm.
walk into a meeting with a toxic personality who is in a leadership role, who is breaking 4 of the 7 in your presence,
Mm-hmm.
everyone in the room knows, oh, so that's the actual culture.
Right.
Oh,
Absolutely.
so that's what I'll actually be judged on.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, got it. And so anyone
Yeah.
who's introverted naturally, that's going to push you right into introvert. Anyone
Mm-hmm.
who's a natural extrovert, that's going to pull that out of them, and
Mm-hmm.
and that's where you can have obstinate, combative individuals in
Right.
some
Well,
in
because your
some view.
fear response is now like if we're going to
It's now
be
triggered.
real human about it, your
Yeah,
fear response is now activated. And
that's right.
wherever the personality framework that I work the most with is the Enneagram. And so your personality now is going to like take hold of the bus and start to want to drive, and it's going to act out of fear because because all of a sudden what you said is not what you did.
That's
That
right.
explicit is what we say, implicit is what we do. That explicit culture does not match the implicit culture. And a one-time experience, you're kind of waiting to see, oh, how is this handled? But when it happens a few times, you're like, oh, exactly.
Oh,
That's
that's
what it
it.
is.
I
That's it.
understand it.
And so
Yeah,
now your fear response is up, and all of the complexities of who we are as humans are now amplified.
yeah.
And it makes it more challenging, which is why I often say that all culture issues are a leadership issue, because how a leader behaves and what a leader rewards or ignores is what the culture becomes.
Yeah.
And that is why it's so like communication issues are very real, but they are not, they're the presenting injury. They are not the cause of your problems.
But if you're a new leader inheriting a culture, right,
Oh, yeah.
or you've grown up and now it's your chance to be in the seat, so
Mm-hmm.
your first time being a director or a VP before you get to C level, and you own
Mm-hmm.
part of this culture. The other challenge that I think you and I have talked about is, how do I make this difference when I only have a small part of the overall culture? You can make a
Yes.
really effective team in the midst of a very ineffective culture. You can
Mm-hmm.
have a positive, a healthy, a transparent, encouraging team in the middle of toxicity.
Absolutely.
You can do your best as a manager to try to protect your team, but we're still in the midst of this monster. And one of
Mm-hmm.
the most empowering things, you mentioned gaslighting. The thing I would say is the most empowering thing you can do for your team is to be honest with them in all ways.
Absolutely.
That doesn't
Yeah.
mean you tell them every secret. Hey, there's layoffs in
Sure.
2 weeks, and I'm not
There's
supposed to tell
boundaries.
anybody, right? But
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
but I think ultimately being honest with the emotion that they're showing you or they're giving you on that day, and yours as well. It's okay to be imperfect, but the trick
Mm-hmm.
is, what do we do in those imperfect moments? And so I do
Absolutely.
think leaders own the culture, but
Mm-hmm.
I think the real challenge is cultures are self-healing, self-repairing, self-sustaining. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's an organization I've worked with off and on for 30 years, and they're going through some transition right now. And the culture, even though the leadership has changed 5 or 6 times over in that time frame, the culture is identical. So you have an organization that went from being in pretty good fiscal shape, and they were sure that they were the greatest thing since sliced bread, 30 years later struggling, and still convinced that they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. And so it's really difficult to sit with that leadership team and try to break down, how are you judging greatest thing since sliced bread? You used to
Right.
be here. You are objectively here. That's not me picking on you. You said that. I'm reading your numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is your filing. So help me understand. Well, people just don't, we're a hidden gem. People just aren't getting we're a hidden gem. We're not a hidden gem. We're behind. We're failing.
Yeah.
So we have to start from a place of, this is who we are right now. It's okay that we want to be here, and really we're going to be
Mm-hmm.
somewhere else if we succeed. But we don't start from a place of, I'm pretty damn awesome.
Right.
Welcome,
Well,
welcome
if
to
there's no
Awesomeville.
right. Well, there is a healthy confidence that you're like
Right.
you walk into, but as part of when I have a whole keynote on rewriting a story in truth. Like, you
Right.
can't rewrite in just imagination that isn't based in any kind of truth, because then people, again, don't trust it. And that works as an individual when you walk through the process I call SNAP. And you have to work within reality for that to be true. And that is also the way organizations work. We can't just pretend that COVID didn't happen in our world and like, oh, it's fine. It's just like 2018 all over again. And we're like, no,
Right.
like, that's not reality. And you can want the same results and have the same purpose and North Star, but you might have to shift the way you get there because the world is now presenting a different set of circumstances to you.
That's right.
That's the reality of that. And I think sometimes that is when I've heard when I've talked to leadership teams. I'm working with a couple leadership teams right now. And the phrase that I think comes up a lot is, well, we just need, like, there's
Right.
we just need them
If
to,
we only had,
if we only
had
have, we just need. And I think the one that comes up a lot is, we just need them to do what I said, or we need better execution. When I think that could possibly be a scapegoat for a few things. What do you think when you hear leaders in your translation role, when you hear leaders say, well, we just need better execution or better communication, what do you think what do they actually need?
Well, I do think it's let's talk positive first. I do think that it's earnest, right? I do think it's an honest
Oh,
statement of,
sure.
right, hey, I just think we need this. But about 25 years ago, and I don't need this smoke, so I shan't name it, but there was a business book that everybody and their dog read. And it was a version of what you're saying. Everyone's saying, we're this far away. If we only had this, I just need one of these. And that's, right now in our times, that's the promise of AI, right? If I put in this gizmo, and gizmo is the
Yeah.
term I've always used in technology. I've spent most of my career working with or around technology. Everyone's convinced that they buy this gizmo, it's going to close this gap for them. And then,
Yeah.
having spent a lot of my career in technology, you are the nerds keeping them from success. Right? I talked to the salesperson, and she told me this thing cures cancer and can be set up in a minute, and you nerds just need to give her a feed. You just need to give her some kind of a feed. And they make this gesture. Visually or emotionally, they make this gesture.
So
you
if you're
nerds
listening
just
only,
need
it's like a wave of your hand. Like, go
la
on.
la 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 la. You nerds are just slowing me down. Just, if you would put this stuff in, nerd, with your nerdery and the nerd land over there, I would be making us, and we're the real business, which is another phrase that just lights me up, which is, I spend a lot of my time in the operations side of the house. And so people will say, well, we're doing the real work of the business. And I saw this in higher education. I saw this in nonprofit. I saw this in finance. I saw it in healthcare. I saw it in government work. I saw it in consulting. Every industry, I said healthcare. Every industry has a version of, we're doing the real work of the company. And as a tech person, I'd always say, great, I'll go shut off the mail servers. Let me know how long the company keeps running. So everyone's looking for this little bit. If I just had this thing, it would fix us. And sometimes that's people, sometimes that's process, sometimes that's roles. But what happens, to your question, is, I'll use the example of project management again, and change management and testing and training at the end of a project. I'll use those examples. Everyone else thinks they're busy doing the work of the company. And so now we're doing this project that we all agree is really important. And let's say, for the sake of argument, we all agree on what we're doing, how we're going to do it, and when it's going to finish, and it all aligns. Anything that goes wrong, we still tend to outwardly put it on one of those people I named. Well, the project manager should have, I never knew that. Right. And as a project manager, you'd be like, well, here's the Kanban board, or here's our project plan, or here's the 82 emails I sent you. Well, you should have tried harder. but the receipts don't work. I'm old. I shan't date myself too much, but there used to be a show that would on rerun when I was a kid called Perry Mason. And Perry Mason, the lawyer, would famously come in and go, Your Honor, wham, and would throw this piece of evidence, and the jury would go, oh, and that would be case closed, And that's what people think is going to happen as project managers. Right. They think they're going to walk in with this list of information, and everyone's going to go, you're right, I made a bad decision, or my team really screwed up there. Doesn't work that way. And so why do we end up in these problems? And why did I put those pieces together? Is if we're constantly thinking that one little miracle cure is going to make us great, then I have to accept I'm part of whether or not that greatness comes next. And for leaders,
just say that again. Just say that again.
I think this little miracle cure is going to get us to greatness, then I have to accept my part in bringing that greatness forward. And I think that's the challenge for leaders, is how you have the integrity to, and frankly, the awareness, because it's not always that they're not being honest. They don't always see it. I had a great leader, a person that I really enjoyed working for, but his blind spot was that people were uncomfortable talking to him. He was a very kind, very nice, somewhat introverted person, but he was a senior executive. And so people would perceive his distance because he's thinking. You and I talk out loud to figure things out. He's processing inside. Same conversation, but it's all happening in here. And so he'll think, and then he'll say, okay. And if you are expecting some giant, okay, Deborah, because we're going to this, and I really appreciate what you said, you're not getting that from him. And so his teams and the people that would work with him would often walk away and go, I don't know where I stand with him. Is he happy? Is he sad? Are we doing the right thing? So to wrap all that together, the challenge for someone like that is to seek out feedback from others, is to try to talk to them and have this collaboration in a way that's not your natural muscle memory. For me, as an extrovert and a talker, my challenge is to remember to sit back and let my
You mean
team
to
talk.
not interrupt? What? Wait, I'm sorry.
You mean to not go, oh, that's a great. Oh, you've got a story? I've got a story just like that.
Wow. Yes. I mean, those of you who are listening, you are totally aware of Jen Whitmer's that is, I'm constantly working on that. And that ties into this idea of it is part of the leader. Like you have to be a part of making that excellence happen, which includes owning your own stuff. And you mentioned the part of you have to get feedback from other people. But once you have that feedback, and if it is something that is not necessarily not changeable, but can be easily misinterpreted, you then have to practice self-disclosure. You have to say, so like I joke all the time, my friend Jeff says that I have a resting interested face, which I think is hilarious. And, but when I am confused, that is not my face. I mean, I'm like super scrunchy, like my nose and my eyes are all together. And people think I am livid with them. And I'm just like, I don't understand. Like, I'm not mad. I'm confused. And I have had to learn to say, I'm not angry. I'm confused. I really want to understand what you're saying. That self-disclosure is part of that making things excellent. That's the leadership skills of getting the feedback, changing what you can, and communicating with your team what's happening. Obviously, that's a personal example, but it's huge on a team. When you're talking about, I don't know where I stand with this guy because of that introverted nature. It's fine that he's an introvert, but there has to be a little bit of feedback and then some self-disclosure with change to create that trust on a team. And
I'll use a militaristic term, but I don't mean it that way. I just mean the intensity. It's hand-to-hand combat. You as a manager have to go person to person to person. I've joked
Yes.
before,
Yeah.
speaking geek, human, and executive, and translating between the three worlds. But the other thing is to sort of be corporate therapist. If
Mhm.
I think a good manager, no matter how you're wired or where you are on the Enneagram, I think your job is to think about, what is my team perceiving? Where is my team in this? Constantly turning your radar on in those meetings to try to be tracking, and then figuring out who needs follow up work. Because
Mhm.
I've had people that work for me that absolutely would sit there in a meeting and go, yes, got it. Did you write that down, Bob? One pickle, got it. They're writing it down. And 2 weeks later, you're like, Bob, where's the one pickle? I'm gonna get on that. And Bob wasn't lying a week ago or 2 weeks ago. It was, I needed to go back and close that up, button that up with Bob.
Mhm.
This is what a pickle means. It means go to this place. And
Mhm.
sometimes as leaders, especially working leaders, which I don't think there's any other kind these days. I think there's nobody sitting in an office,
Mm-mm.
smoking a cigar, doing nothing but going, yes, turn left. So,
Right.
so I think it's especially hard that you have to make time, but it's good time to sit with each of
Mhm.
your team and follow up those items and be very
And that's
present
what
for them.
Well, and when you're talking about it, I know you used hand-to-hand combat, but because as a former elementary school music teacher, I think of it like a circle dance, like where there's two concentric circles and you're hand to
Yep.
hand, back and
Yep.
forth like this, and that feels in our super hyper productivity outcome results focused
Right.
world unproductive.
That's right.
But the counterintuitive nature of it is actually the thing that makes us productive. Again, back
That
to
is
that
right.
idea of a checklist or engaging with people. And that's why when cultures aren't listening to each other, because I think if I were to characterize most of our conversation, we're talking about how do you really listen up and down and
That's right.
sideways in a group. When cultures don't do that, they're they're hamstringing themselves to get to the very results that they want.
Right.
We want productivity, we want profit, we want purpose, we want all these things, but you have to do the human work, because the AI agents aren't really going to take over. Like they can't do all the things. We have to understand humans, and more and more and more, I think that will be the case. We've always needed to understand humans, and now I think it will be even more valuable. And those are the leaders and the cultures that will succeed.
Yeah. I think the more awareness you can bring of yourself and who you are. It's okay to be whatever you are on that scale. Let's use just the
Mm-hmm.
Enneagram, but we could pick any of them, right?
Yeah.
It's okay to know I'm wired this way. The most destructive thing that happens in orgs is
I'm
when I
going to
use that
pause
to
you
say,
because I
oh, good.
think I'm going to pause you just to say it's not only okay that you are that, you have to acknowledge that is who I am.
I agree.
It's
I agree.
okay. And don't try to
This is
pretend to be
me.
somebody else. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the only way that it becomes destructive, and you talk about this in the book, is when it becomes like a badge we put on our desk. And
Mm-hmm.
and so in other words, when people go, well, I'm a 7, so take it or leave it, baby. This is what you're
Mm-mm.
getting.
Right.
That no. You knowing that's you, that's so you can understand what you need to not do, or what your strength is, and so therefore what your weaknesses are. So maybe we should
Mm-hmm.
focus on those weaknesses. Like that,
Mm-hmm.
that's the challenge of authentic leadership. The challenge is,
Absolutely.
the most visible way you see it is, yeah, the person that's willing to be the contrarian, the person that's willing to poke the bear, whichever phrase you want to use there. But it should be anchored in, not, well, someone's got to make a point here. It should be anchored in, this is genuinely what I think is the best advocacy for the org, regardless of what it does for me,
Yeah.
regardless of if I'm going to be promoted or kept on
Mm-hmm.
staff or whatever the thing is. This is the thing that should be some greater truth. That's a North Star that's nice to have. And the same for your people. I should be doing right by Jennifer, regardless of how great or horrible I think Jennifer is at her role. If Jennifer is in the wrong role, my job as manager isn't to sit there and go, well, Jennifer's useless, or let's give Jennifer 2 things she can't handle 10. My job
Mm-hmm.
is to find a place where Jennifer can be 10 over 10, or to help Jennifer out of the organization, and hopefully
Mm-hmm.
with grace and respect.
Mm-hmm.
Jennifer, do you need more training? Jennifer, do you need to be in this course we have? Jennifer, do you need to go get this thing? but it may just be, Jennifer, I don't think this is the fit for you. How can we help get you to your 10 out of 10 role?
Yeah.
And so if we can center on that up and down the org, I think what you
Mm-hmm.
start to find is organizations that are self-repairing. So instead of
Yeah.
us protecting the, don't, no one talks to mama. Don't go talk to mama. Nobody goes upstairs to mama. I'll handle mama. We can't have 1,000 people going into the CEO's office. We can't have 30,000 people going to the CEO's office. But what we have to have in our organization is we have to have communication that's authentic. So we don't
Mm-hmm.
need another meeting. And that's what a lot of orgs do. We don't need better structures to our meetings. What we really need is more clarity and more
Mm-hmm.
compassion for each other. And like you said, the counterintuitive part is to do this hand-to-hand work where
Mm-hmm.
you're working with each other and making sure, did I really understand her? Does she really
Yeah.
understand me?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think does pay the best dividends in the long run.
And there's such a kindness to that. Like I talk about the difference between nice and kind. Like there's cultures of nice that
Yeah,
almost always are toxic because nice
correct.
is surface sugar. It doesn't have depth.
Yeah,
But a kindness, I have a current client who is working through this with one of his employees who came on. They tried this hybrid role that had half of it being things that she already has experience with, she's been great at, and the other half was learning these new skills. Well, now it's been about 18 months. The half that she's good at, always been good. The other half, he's like,
right,
I can't do any
right,
more training. And I'm like, you can't. So we've been like talking through what can you do with kindness. And one of the things when they eventually had this conversation, she was like, yeah, I really hate it. And I feel stupid every day. Yeah.
right,
Like, so
right,
everybody, like, acknowledging that doesn't mean this employee was a bad employee. It means that that fit wasn't working. This hybrid role
that's
wasn't
right.
great. So how can we transition into either a part-time role or they only do this part? And like, there's creativity that happens in there because that is a kindness to recognize the truth. And I think that
Right.
when you're telling that story, it just reminded me of this very specific coaching I'm doing with another client right now, that it happens all the time. But without listening and compassion, we never would have discovered that. It just wouldn't have happened. Oh,
Well, my
Harry,
heart
I could
breaks for
talk to
her
you for
thinking about
forever.
how long
Yeah.
she was just sitting there thinking, I'm just gonna die. They're gonna walk in any day and
Yeah.
fire me, and I'm
Right.
the worst person in the world. And so, hey, boss, I
Exactly.
know I know that you didn't know what to do with her, but also think about her miles per gallon. What a
Mm-hmm.
drag that was. Her e-brake was on that entire time,
Yeah.
and that's what I think we owe each other. I think even to peers, this
Mm-hmm.
isn't just manager stuff. I think part of leadership is leading in all facets, and so I
Absolutely.
think
Well,
that
as I
the
like to say,
biggest
you're
piece is
CEO
that.
of your own desk. Like you got to lead.
Yeah,
If you got to
yeah,
lead yourself first before you can lead
that's right.
anybody else, and you are CEO of your own desk, and that involves all kinds of different levels of leadership without position. Like you don't have to have the title to lead. And
Yeah,
oh
that's
my
right.
gosh, Harry, as always, we could talk for literally hours, decades. But our listeners are probably don't always want to be around for all of that. But I am so grateful for just your wisdom, your depth of experience, your breadth of experience to help us think about what does it look like to lead in a culture when that alignment is off, and how do you get there in really practical ways. And so how can we continue this conversation with you? Tell the people how to find you, what you would like. This QR code, if you're watching, goes to Harry's LinkedIn. Tell us how to find you.
You can come find me on LinkedIn at LinkedIn/in/Harry Cook IV. I'm the fourth
That's
Harry
right, Harry
Cook
Cook the fourth.
IV. You get to
Uh-huh.
practice your Roman numerals, everybody. Or, as the people will say on the airline, Mr. Cookiv? Cookiv? Cook the fourth.
Harry
Cook the
Cookie.
fourth.
Harry Cookie. No, sorry. We
Yeah,
won't.
I've got
We
Cookie. I
inside
got
joke.
Cookie. Yes, I did get Cookie. That's right.
I know.
So, yes, you can join me there. You can reach out. Be happy to talk. And what I'm looking for, I am trying to figure out my next role. So, part of
Yeah.
what I'm looking for is just a really interesting organization and really great people to work with. I think I do well in organizations that have challenges that they're trying to overcome. But I'm also interested in organizations of all kinds of different sizes. So,
Yeah.
if nothing else, hey, are you an interesting person who knows other interesting people? I'd probably like to have a virtual coffee with you, or maybe a literal coffee with you. I've got airplane tickets. I can travel. So let's
He
chat.
is especially interested if you'd like to go to the Sphere in Vegas.
Yeah. If you'd like to see a show at Sphere, I'm happy to join you there. Because here's the deal, Jen. Can we
Anytime.
say this before we close? Look,
Sure.
Las Vegas is a city no grown up should enjoy. I grant you that. I grant you that. But I love whimsy. I love whimsy. I love
As do I.
responsible overeating, good meals, and people watching. And that town has those aplenty. So
In
I will continue to
spades,
defend that fine city.
shall
I
I
love
say.
that city for that reason. That's right.
I love it so much. Well, we so appreciate your wisdom. And as you are listening, listeners, I'm talking to you. I always want to hear what this conversation stirred up for you. What landed, what made you go, oh my gosh, I feel a little seen, what challenged you? What are you mulling over and thinking about? And so you can always contact me, email Jen with 2 N's at jenwhitmer.com, or DM, LinkedIn, and Instagram. We're going to put everything in the show notes, of course, and ways you can connect with Harry as well. You can read more in Joyosity, How to Develop Intense Happiness in Work and Life, even if things are what they are. That is available as well. And we'll put that in the show notes. My, coaching hat moment all the time is pick the one thing that you took away from this conversation to try. You can't change everything all at once. That will absolutely destroy your joy. But one small practice, one small shift toward healthier interactions, healthier communication, healthier ownership will increase your joy because you will become more aligned. And that is what makes Joyosity in practice something really powerful. And staying connected to who you already are, especially when leadership gets hard, is really where the power is. So if you found this helpful, if you're like, oh my gosh, James Mercatelli needs to hear this, please share it with them. And if you would rate and subscribe the show, it helps more leaders help us find this conversation, where I too am an incredibly stubborn optimist about this work, that joy isn't extra. Joy is absolutely what will save us and our organizations and our cultures. So please get more people on this movement, because that's how we change things. So Harry, I so appreciate your time, your expertise. It was really wonderful to have you today.
Thanks, Jen. Good talking to you as always. Thanks, everyone.
Absolutely.
Appreciate your time.
Bye, everybody.